Israel's capture of East Jerusalem in 1967, and with it the Temple Mount, seemed to contradict Christ's prophecy of Jerusalem being trodden underfoot by the Gentiles until his return. But incredibly, Israel immediately gave the Temple Mount back to the custodial care of King Hussein of Jordan, who turned it over in 1994 to Yasser Arafat and his PLO. Thus, the very heart of Jerusalem remains in Gentile hands, and the Gentile nations of the world demand control. Central to the Middle East conflict today is the issue of the so-called Palestinian people. The Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, headed by Yasser Arafat since 1969, claims to represent the Palestinians. The PLO declares,
"The struggle with the Zionist enemy is not a struggle about Israel's borders, but about Israel's existence."
The PLO, as everyone ought to know, is an Islamic terrorist organization. It trained Idi Amin's murder gangs who killed about 300,000 black Christians in Uganda. Most terrorist organizations, in fact, around the world were trained by the PLO. Arafat committed his first murder at age 20. Under him, the PLO became the largest, wealthiest, and most vicious and bloodiest terrorist organization ever known. By 1970, the PLO had 55 bases in Jordan, and its continued terrorism against Jordanian civilians was so vicious that King Hussein turned his Bedouin troops on them, and after weeks of bloody fighting, chased the PLO into Lebanon. There the PLO wiped out the Christian towns of Damour, Beit Malat, Tal Abbas, and others. Its reign of terror in Lebanon went largely unreported. The international press was cowed into silence by the brutal murder of those who dared to tell the truth. Larry Buckman and Sean Tulin of ABC TV, Mark Trion of Free Belgium Radio, Robert Pfeffer of Der Spiegel, and others. About 300,000 Lebanese civilians were murdered, and more than 100,000 surviving young girls were left pregnant in the PLO's rape of that country before the Israelis expelled them. Yet Israel again was painted the villain.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Arafat, Chairman of the Executive Council of the Palestine Liberation Organization, His Excellency Yitzhak Rabin, Prime Minister of Israel, the President of the United States.
Any peace agreements with PLO are a pretense intended to deceive Israel. The example Muslims follow today was set by Muhammad. In 628, he made a 10-year peace treaty with his own Quraysh tribe in Mecca. 2 years later, he attacked Mecca and slaughtered every male and took the women and children slaves. Arafat has publicly declared,
"In the name of Allah, I am not considering it more than the agreement signed between our Prophet Muhammad and the Quraysh tribe. Peace for us means the destruction of Israel."
First step is to pretend peace in order to obtain territories inside Israel from which to launch her final destruction. Incredibly, Arafat and his PLO murderers have been sanitized and lionized by world media. This ruthless, sadistic criminal was given the Nobel Peace Prize and is honored as the champion of justice for the oppressed Palestinian people. Palestinians? There never was a Palestinian people, nation, language, culture, religion, or economy. The claims of descent from a Palestinian people who supposedly lived for thousands of years in a land called Palestine is a deliberate lie. That land was called Canaan, inhabited by Canaanites. What had been Canaan became the land of Israel when God gave it to his people. Yet a revised history which hides the truth is promoted in the best of encyclopedias and reference volumes, even Christian publications. Those who today call themselves Palestinians are Arabs by birth, language, Islamic religion, and culture. The name Palestine comes from the Philistines, ancient Israel's chief enemies. In AD 130, the Romans rebuilt Jerusalem as a pagan city with a temple to Jupiter where the Jewish temple had stood. Provoked to rebellion, about 500,000 Jews were killed and thousands sold into slavery. The Romans angrily renamed the land of Israel Syria Palestina, and that's where the name comes from. From that time, Jews living there became known as Palestinians. During World War II, the British Army had a Palestinian brigade made up entirely of Jewish volunteers. The Palestinian Symphony Orchestra was all Jewish, and the Palestine Post was a Jewish newspaper. In 1948, Arabs who had fled from Israel began to claim that they were the true Palestinians and that Israel had always belonged to them. World media eagerly promotes that lie. The truth is that in 1948, Arabs owned a mere 3% of so-called Palestine. Israel's claim to the land goes back 4,000 years to Abraham's purchase of the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. There, Abraham buried his wife Sarah, and there Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah are buried. In Hebron, David was crowned king. This sacred Jewish site has no relationship to Arabs or Islam. Yet Muslims, in spite of a continuous Jewish presence there for 3,000 years, claim Hebron as their own. They built a mosque, and they are determined to drive out every Jewish resident. For 50 years, the world has faced the problem of hundreds of thousands of so-called Palestinian refugees from the 1948 War of Independence. Typical of its lies, world media accuses the Jews of ruthlessly dispossessing the native population. In fact, the Arab High Command urgently warned Arabs by radio to get out of Palestine while they slaughtered the Jews. About 350,000 fled. Many did not. Those who remained are Israeli citizens and today comprise about 16% of Israel's voters. Jordan annexed the UN-designated Palestinian territory, expelled all Jews, destroyed all Jewish houses of worship, and renamed as West Bank what had been Judea and Samaria since Bible times. In spite of billions of dollars in oil revenues and a land mass 700 times greater than Israel, Arab nations have refused to absorb any 1948 refugees into normal life. Now numbering in the millions due to a high birth rate and occupying shameful refugee camps in Gaza, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and the West Bank, these unfortunate pawns are deliberately kept on display. In contrast, the fledgling state of Israel, with a population at the time of 600,000, quickly absorbed 820,000 Jewish refugees who fled from Arab lands where for 1,300 years. Since the advent of Islam, Jews were routinely beaten and spat upon in the markets and streets. Hundreds would be brutalized and killed in random bursts of violence by Muslim mobs, and their property confiscated. Israel's rebirth provided a welcome refuge to which they fled. Israel has absorbed millions of immigrants. More than 1 million Palestinians in refugee camps came under Israeli control in the 1967 Six-Day War. Israel offers them state land, electricity, sanitation, streets, and schools, and has built 9 residential projects housing 10,000 families. Arab nations, incredibly, oppose Israel's help for the refugees. Even more incredible, the United Nations annually adopts the following amazing resolutions.
The General Assembly demands that Israel desist from the resettlement of Palestine refugees in the Gaza Strip. The General